From my wife, who works with disabled or abused or otherwise non-standard kids. One day, we had a potential new kid for our daycare program. We were showing him the facility, and he noticed a few workers who were replacing a window another kid put a chair through it that morning. He looks at them and asks, "What are you assfuckers doing?" We were ever so slightly appalled. But then again, the kid has a rough home life. After the tour, we stuck him in one of the groups to see how he got along with other children. Cue a high-pitched scream and a crying kid. "What happened?" you asked. The little guy had crawled between a skirt-wearing woman's legs and tried to shove his finger right in her lady bits. When questioned, he stated that he does it with his sister all the time. We later learned that the whole family often watched adult content together. Hello, foster care. And now for the shocker. That little boy was 5 years old. I've got a similar story from my new job. A 6-year-old boy told me that he wanted to bruise my bottom. Turns out the mom was a sex worker who would have guys come in and abuse this young boy and his brother. So this boy has always had an inappropriate contact with his brother and random guys, all before the age of 6. Oh, dear God, I consider myself to be emotionally dyslexic to a certain degree. But this makes me sick to my stomach. A mother exploiting her own children under the age of 10. I wish no less than a happy and successful life for these kids. I work for CPS and am still fairly new to the agency. Most of the time, reports of abuse and neglect do not result in kids needing to be removed. So, at least there's that. My most interesting case involved a 12-year-old girl who was a registered sex offender. She had molested her siblings and the parents called CPS to ask for help because they weren't sure how to handle it. The girl ended up being charged. I'm not sure why she wasn't given some sort of inpatient treatment program. Instead, this happened in another state, but she was put on the registry. Her probation officer called CPS in my state when she and her family moved out here. Poor kid. She wasn't allowed to swim with her siblings, couldn't go to school, couldn't go to the park, her siblings couldn't have friends over, etc. Just had a case where the mom was on probation for working with the cartel. Not going to give a lot of information on that, but it was definitely concerning. The cartel. One of my coworkers had a Munchausen by proxy case. This poor girl had so many surgeries and was so messed up that her mother had everyone convinced the girl was paralyzed. We got involved when the girl was 16 years old. She ended up graduating with a 4.0 and going to college, so at least it ended decent. Come talk to my kids. My ex molested the oldest when she was 3. CPS found him guilty and the police arrested him. He somehow managed to dodge indictment, and then sued the agency and the worker personally. Since then, the littler one has come home from his house with bruises all over her back, has had 2 black eyes, and both kids had broken bones that went and treated for close to a week before I got them back and got them treatment. I call it in, and they refuse to investigate. No one has ever looked at them. No one has asked them what happens. Per the orders, I can't even get them therapy without his consent, which isn't forthcoming. Now we're seeing a 9-year-old shitting herself and smearing it on walls, and the 7-year-old abusing animals. Still no response. They're so afraid of being sued they've sold my kids to an abuser. Worst I have ever heard absolutely turned my stomach. Worked with a lovely, kind, docile, funny guy who had formerly worked on mental health service vans. We were having a slow, quiet day and he was telling me why he would not do mental health work anymore. He was called to a farm in Wales where a woman of 21 had been discovered, malnourished with rickets and all manner of other problems, chained up in a horse box. She had been kept there from a young age. She had been kept there by her father. The mother was complicit. She was regularly sexually abused and beaten not just by her father but by his friends too. The guy I worked with was obviously hurt by what he saw. He didn't like his part in the process of helping her. He had to pick her up from a police cell where she had been for 2 days. She wouldn't make eye contact and winced and made a squeaking noise whenever men came near. I have heard some nasty stories, but this one is easily the most loathsome. Girl kept in a horse box from young age and sexual abused by father and his associates for years. I just can't understand stories like this where there are so many other complicit people. One horrifying psychopath is one thing, but for them to so easily find people who want to go along with their treachery and no one calls the cops. Truly chilling. Intake investigator here. The stuff I see is ridiculous. Walked into an active meth lab that was set up in the same room a little girl was sleeping in. Found a wandering 2-year-old. It was 5 hours before the parents realized he was missing. The cases where I actually do get a removal order. Prepping for court and having to defend why the agency felt the parents couldn't parent. That's almost as bad as investigating the allegations. Babies that haven't eaten in days, homes that are so unkempt the homeless wouldn't even squat in them, the parents who need mental health services but refuse, same for the parents who need substance abuse treatment. I see more drug-related allegations than anything. It's one of the most frustrating jobs ever. We have no authority. People don't have to let us in, or take drug screens, or talk to us at all. Our hands are so tied that I can't believe we actually can substantiate allegations. People don't realize that we try to intervene or place services with the families to prevent future maltreatment, but are unable to do so because parents feel that they don't need the help, or they dodge the workers' attempts at making contact. In my state, we only have so many days to complete an investigation, and then we have to close it to stay within state-mandated time limits. It's hard work, but for the few kids who you can help, it means the world. The barriers faced by CPS workers make me super sad. I work for an agency that provides services to victims of domestic violence, and we protect our clients with respect to confidentiality, regardless of who tries to reach them. Our goal is to get clients out of harm's way first, then welfare second. If victims think shelters will send them straight to the cops, CPS, etc., then they're less likely to seek help, which means kids stay in the abusive household. That said, I've seen so many children under 10 come into the shelter with just whole mouths of rotted teeth. We're required to report that neglect, but we're still bound by policy to make arrangements for CPS to meet the family and not simply turn them over. I've had a police officer tell me our shelter was like a fortress. I've also watched several sobbing parents in the shelter have their children taken away by police in extreme situations. I wish it were easier for everyone involved. Shit's so complicated. Had a case where the mom was voluntarily handing her kids over since she was actively suicidal. My coworker and I went out to serve the court paperwork to gain custody of the 3 kids for 10 months. We get there and mom is obviously upset. I speak with her to let her know the process, when court will be, where the children will be, visitation schedule. Everything is going as smoothly as a removal can be. Kids were ready to go. We had the car seats ready. When the kids are in the cars, my coworker and I confront her about the report we got about her slashing her wrist. She shows it to us and we tell her we aren't leaving until she goes to the hospital voluntarily or we call emergency medical services. She starts becoming a bit defensive now, saying she will go tomorrow. We don't really leave her a choice at that point since we just removed her kids and didn't want a suicide. She goes into her friend's house. She was also homeless for a bit to grab some stuff before her crisis worker takes her to the same hospital we are taking the kids. We get physicals on all of the kids we take into custody. Mom ends up in the waiting room before us, and since she's been pretty forthcoming, I ask if she wants to help me check the kids in since they are her kids. That's when I noticed she was completely glazed over. I immediately tell my coworker to escort the kids away from the mom, and I ask her what she's on. Heroin and alcohol. Literally not even 10 minutes earlier she was perfectly fine. Mom's escorted off the premises since she became belligerent. You think that would be the end of the story, but it gets worse. The kids are seen in triads, and I have the baby in my arms, and he's fussy, really fussy. I don't have kids of my own, but I know when a kid is tugging on his ear and is fussy, he probably has an ear infection, but he was hot to the touch. I had the nurse see the baby first. He had a fever of 104.7. He was immediately taken to a room to bring his temp down. The 2-year-old had severe dental decay, and the 4-year-old was just there, keeping herself together. It was one of the longest nights I had and the only time I ever cried once everything was done. When I dropped the kids off at their new foster home, all 3 of them started crying. The older 2 were screaming to not leave them alone. They didn't do this when their mom left. They did when I left. I guess it was the few times that they had affection. In hindsight, I'm thankful that mom called us when she did, or else that could have been a dead child. The kids have been adopted as mother couldn't stay clean long enough for a successful reunification. Kids exposed to adult content, babies shaken, beaten with sticks, Keys, phone books. A lot of sexual abuse mostly done by the parents. Severe neglect, no food. Locked in closets for days with no bed to toilet. Filthy homes. Parents just generally not giving a shit. Incest. Children being tied to windows and having things thrown at them. Drug use at a very young age. Parents videotaping themselves beating their kids. The list can go on and on. It's pretty gruesome. Reading things like this, I just don't understand how people can do this shit to kids, never mind their own kids. The only thing I can think of, and it doesn't make it acceptable, but more understandable, is that the parents receive similar sorts of abuse growing up as well. And this is how they think they should raise children. Maybe they are just psychopaths, who knows? Whatever the reasoning, I'm glad for services like CPS and its counterparts in other countries, NSBCC in the UK. People may complain about other people's kids being taken away from them because they never see what these services see. But if they could see stories like this, I'm sure they would quickly be glad for it. Another thing, how pathetic of a person must you be to completely destroy the innocence and life of someone who you are supposed to unconditionally love and protect? I'm not a parent myself, but I couldn't imagine how disgusted I would feel if I even accidentally hit my own child. It makes me quite sad, and I think this is enough of this thread for me. I've never actually seen stories from social workers like this before, and I will be happy if I don't have to see another. But I'm glad I have read some because I never actually knew it was that bad. The world can be an awful place, but if you are talking from your own experiences, then I have the utmost respect for you. I don't think I would be able to not try pummel the parents into the ground if I saw any of the things you listed. I'm not sure you really want to know. I was a case manager for a private, non-profit treatment foster care agency, right out of college. A worker in a group home for emotionally troubled adolescents. Every time I'd think nothing could shock me, something did. The girl who was removed from the home because her brother sexually abused her, brother was still at home. A boy sold for drugs at age 2. A girl forced into prostitution by her mother at age 13. A girl who lived in fear as a teen that the sexual abuse her mother allowed taking of her when she was 10 would show up in her future. Learning problems due to head trauma from abuse. So many teenage boys given away by their mothers because mom's new boyfriend didn't like the kid. Pregnant at 12 years old by her own father, or uncle, as they both sexually abused her regularly. 2 failed adoptions because the child had too many problems, so adoptive parents returned them like a freaking pair of pants. A brother and sister so neglected or ignored that they could barely talk at age 4 and 6. The 2 cases that shocked me the most, a girl of about 12 who had a hearing loss in both ears. It seems her father rammed pencils in her ears when she gave his friends a hard time when they were abusing her. She had nightly night terrors. She was sure her father was coming to get her and was on guard every minute of every day. This was at the group home. No amount of talk about her father being in prison on the other side of the state helped. She found out we were not allowed to lock the cottage doors and was inconsolable the night I worked the overnight shift. I locked the damn doors and told the higher-ups we needed to do it. She was sure her father would find her and kill her. And if I tried to save her, he'd kill me too, and it would be all my fault that you died. The other was a 16-year-old was sexually abused by her boyfriend's friends. She said about 10 of them. She ended up with the clap and crabs, as well as cervical, vaginal, and anal scar tissue from trauma. She ran away from foster care. Guess where she ran? Yep, to her boyfriend. When she was found, she told me it was okay now because she had already been done. No one was ever charged or even arrested. I lasted 10 years in the field. A brother and sister so neglected or ignored that they could barely talk at age 4 and 6. I knew a little girl like this a few years ago. One of my friends was roommates with the girl's mother and her boyfriend, who was not the child's father. And I'll never forget the first time I came over to their house. As I was saying my hellos, this little child of about 4 ran up to me and just latched on, then held out a book and babbled something incoherently. I asked, "What did you say, sweetie?" She repeated herself, but the words were still not actual words. I was surprised, cause she was old enough to know how to talk, but she just babbled like a baby. I asked her if she wanted me to read to her, and she nodded and practically jumped up and down. At first, I thought she may have had some developmental disorder, but it soon became apparent that she had just never acquired proper speech due to sheer neglect. It made me so sad. She was so sweet and loving, and clearly starved for attention. She didn't let go of me the whole time I was there. Her mom was a piece of shit. All she ever did was play WoW, do drugs, psychedelics, and X. She wasn't really an addict or anything. And chain smoke in the house. Completely ignored her kid. Her boyfriend was the one who did most of the parenting, along with my friend who lived there. I read that book to her that day. We went over our ABCs. I played with her the rest of the day, and ended up staying the night with my friend. The little girl had fallen asleep on my lap, and I didn't want her to be disappointed when she woke up and I was gone. I spent the whole next day with her too. The mom had no problem with it either, 'cause it freed up more time for her to do whatever she wanted without the inconvenience of parenting her child. I brought her gifts whenever I came over and tried to see her as much as I could until she started school. Her speech had improved measurably after just a couple weeks of someone actually paying some damn attention to her. To answer some of your questions, yes, I did think about calling CPS, but they lived out in the middle of nowhere. Half the roads there didn't even have names, and I had no address. Even my friend that lived there didn't know the address, and he just received his mail at his sister's house. I suppose I could have snooped and tried to find a piece of their mail with an address on it, but I didn't think of it at the time. I have kept tabs on them through Facebook over the years, and even though I live in another state now, my friend that lived there still drops by sometimes, and he reports that even though the mom is still a loser, the daughter is in school now and doing well, so there is a somewhat happy ending to this story. Also, thank you so much to all who have called me a beautiful person for taking an interest in this child. I don't think I did anything that any other decent person wouldn't have done, but you are all too kind. No child deserves to be treated like a burden, especially one as sweet and desperate for love as that little girl. If I could have just taken custody of her myself, I would have totally done so without a second thought. Holy crap. How did I forget about this? I just remembered that CPS did get called on the mom several years ago. I don't know who did it, but she was blubbering all over Facebook about how a social worker showed up at her house and she was all scared she was gonna get in trouble. She was begging all her friends to please not say anything bad if CPS contacted any of them. Nothing did end up happening to her, but hopefully that little brush with the law scared her straight. My agency 30 years ago had a boy that was beaten and forced into child pornography. When he was rescued at 8, he had burn marks all over him, and his arms, back, and face had been sliced with a knife. His back had chain whip scars, and his arm was broken so badly that it never healed right, and the nerve damage resulted in the need for it to be amputated. The boy spoke with a stutter and was paranoid. He was put in a group home, and then a foster home. He was close with his foster family's neighbors and ran away with them when they moved away. He wasn't found until he was 21, so he was legally allowed to stay with them. We didn't work with him since he ran away, but 2 years ago I saw him being interviewed on TV. He was shockingly healthy looking, no stutter. I hope he found the peace and love he deserved with the family he ran away with. Most of the time when I read about these victims of child pornography, they're always in such horrible state of health. I have to wonder, doesn't the scars and bruises left from the physical abuse detract from the pornography? Wouldn't they want to keep the child looking young and fresh and innocent? I just don't understand. I guess it's not to be understood, but it doesn't make any sense to me. One of the worst was a case I was jointly investigating with police, and the teen girl was being constantly abused by her stepfather. The girl told me that her stepdad would always tell her they were lovers in a past life and they are celestial soulmates, and told her whenever he would be intimate with his wife he couldn't perform unless he thought of her. The mother knew for years what was going on but didn't want to leave him. We confronted the mom about the stepdad, and she knew the stepdad couldn't perform unless he fantasizes about her daughter. When the detective told the mom she was being arrested, her only response was, "But I have work in the morning." She had no remorse. That will always stay with me. Just my 2 cents here, and this is only from the small amount you shared with us, but to me it sounds more like the mother had just given up long before the police confronted her. For lack of better words, that the remorse had done its damage a long time ago, and the guilt and remorse she felt drove her to that point. But of course I'm not trying to justify her actions, just give it in another perspective.